Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video I'm going to go through and just answer some open sort of Q&A that I'm getting from inside of the members lounge. I try to answer all the questions in the 2 live webinars each week, but sometimes there's just a whole bunch of really insightful ones that come in between, and so I try to take the time to put them in a video and answer them really clearly, and they give me great video ideas as well. So this is going to be an open sort of Q&A video just about a whole bunch of different things. Attachment styles, codependency, emotional regulation, a whole bunch of different topics that are coming up that I just wanted to put in here and answer. So I'm going to use people's first letter of their first name and go into their questions here. So we'll call the first person Jay, and Jay says, "Hi Thais, I have a question about memories. I'm fearful avoidant, so I'm used to working with trauma memories, but I've recently been struggling with happy memories. I find happy things from my past can be really triggering, and that I feel so much sadness about having lost them that it's almost overwhelming. What insights do you have? It's making it hard for me to get into new positive situations because it triggers in a way that I've only experienced with PTSD before. Maybe that sounds crazy. Any suggestions? Thanks." So, great question. The first thing that I will share is that it's not about, what I'm noticing here is that it's not about the happy memory itself. So if you can imagine that you're like slowing down and doing this in slow motion, it's not the happy memory itself that's causing the sadness. It's the meaning you give to the happy memory. So if you can imagine it's like in slow motion, you'll see that you have the happy memory, and that's actually good. That's a happy feeling. And then in like a nanosecond or millisecond later, you put meaning on that situation. So you go, you know, I have this happy memory and now it's gone, and you might fear that I'm going to lose everything again. All these happy things are going to keep being lost. And it could be a fear of loss that you put on the happy memory, and that creates anxiety. The meaning could also be that very specific. It could be very personal. Like, let's say the memory is of you in this past happy romantic relationship, and you remember this happy moment with that person, and then you a moment later are like, and we're not there anymore, and I'm going to be alone forever, right? And maybe you give it that meaning. And so if you were to slow it down, you'd see in actual slow motion, it's the happy memory you remember, and then the meaning that comes right after. And that's actually the pain point that you want to work on. And working through that pain point will actually give you resolution. So questioning the meaning itself that comes right after. And sometimes it can be like the idea of loss itself, like fear of loss or pain of loss. And so we want to, when we're working on the story, we can question and equilibrate the story, like a lot of you are familiar with in the community or even through videos I share online. And that's a great reprogramming tool. But the other thing that you can do here is you can look at, and it might be hard at first because it's a very blunt question and it's very direct, but you can look at like, how did me transforming, or how did this memory changing, how did things changing actually improve my life, not just cause pain? Because what you'll see is like there's always 2 sides to everything, and sometimes what can cause a lot of suffering is we sort of split a memory into a one-sided selective perception. And so because the brain is wired to focus more on negative than positive, so it can know all the negative that is potentially coming and protect you from it, it's not uncommon that you'll go, oh, it was only loss and there was no gain anywhere in my life. And maybe the memory is of something happy in childhood, and maybe you lost the, more dependent, deep connection with mom or dad in childhood, but maybe you gained that in romantic relationships, new connections, or maybe in deeper friendships and the relationship to yourself and all these different things. So you want to just recognize that sometimes the process of evolution of how our lives sort of change and shift and evolve doesn't mean that we lost a memory altogether. What we loved or what we appreciated about a specific memory might just be showing up in our lives nowadays in a different set of ways, like in a different form, if that makes sense. So check that out and see what comes up for you. It's a really beautiful question. So another wonderful question from R R says, I'm doing the codependency course. I barely started, and off the bat, I caught 2 of my codependent actions. Excellent. I feel like I have plenty. I texted a colleague, good friend. I was sick on Friday night, eating the fried snacks. We had a social gathering. They did not empathize, and I started telling myself stories. Good eye-opening course, especially after inner child and shadow work. Excellent. The question is, do codependents become leaders, or can leaders have codependency in them? This is really interesting. So it's interesting because there will be a correlation that's likely, because often codependents want to become, often codependents are very much in a caretaking space. So people who are codependent are people who sometimes have poor boundaries, right? But definitely feel people's feelings a lot, put others' needs above their own, often really care about the well-being of others at a deeper level, right? That it's part of their conditioning and their programming is to really keep that empathizing part of themselves open, and even really feed that part that we all have, but that's just really conditioned into this person more. However, when we take that into a leadership perspective, what's really interesting and what I believe is that good leaders can't be codependent, because codependency is often this sort of dilemma where you lose yourself in other people, and it often makes it really hard for individuals to make good and healthy decisions, to look at the whole perspective without bias, to be able to take everybody into consideration, because maybe the codependent has one person that they're really codependent with that becomes sort of exclusive to others. And so what I often see is that many good leaders, let's say, can be individuals who were codependent and had some of those really nurturing cares and qualities, but then also learned how to set healthy boundaries, learned how to communicate their own needs, learned how to be direct and share and not be afraid of conflict in order to sort of move things through and resolve situations and have those tough conversations. Whereas codependents, usually because their fear of judgment or fear of abandonment or all these different subconscious fears that are often running them, often shy away from things like that. So I think that would honestly really stunt a leader's growth. And then the flip side of that too is that sometimes people want a leadership role for not so great reasons. Sometimes it's not about people who are really empathizing and caring for human qualities and wanting to make a change and impact and help others. Sometimes people want a leadership role because they want power over others. And sometimes there can be more unhealthy motives for people wanting to be really great leaders. Maybe they want praise, or maybe they want sort of different things. So I wouldn't say it's too one-sided, but it's a really insightful question, making the link between how people, at least with some certain qualities that are also often shared with codependents, can want to be in a position where they lead or help others. So the next question, we're going to say from Jay, says, I am wondering what it looks like when an FA in a relationship with a securely attached person. I think I am with a securely attached person, and I identify a lot with FA tendencies. I often feel a disconnection, not dissociation, but more disconnected from the present and from myself and my partner, when nothing significant is really happening. It usually happens all of a sudden when we are watching TV or just hanging out. I'm wondering if you know what this is all about. Yeah, sometimes a disconnect that shows up like that is a symptom of an unmet need that sort of makes it all the way to your conscious awareness. So sometimes we can have an unmet need, and maybe it's for a deeper conversation. Maybe it's for sharing more personal things with one another. Maybe it's for wanting validation, or to be seen or heard by your partner. And sometimes we kind of are like, oh, no big deal, and we kind of repress it into the subconscious, and sometimes it makes it all the way to the conscious, and it can feel like sort of a jolting disconnection. So when that happens, I would ask myself, since I'm clear in this case about the disconnection, I would ask myself, okay, what is causing this disconnect? What is missing from this moment when nothing significant is happening that's causing me to feel a disconnect? And I would see what comes up. It's a really important thing to check in on. So it's a great question. Another question I have is, another 2 questions I'm actually going to go through here, is How do I get closure in a relationship? This is from an earlier post somebody sent over. How do I, and we'll call this person A, how do I get closure from a relationship on my own? And that's a really insightful question. So what happens is sometimes we have a relationship, let's say two people, we'll call them Bob and Mary. Sometimes we have Bob who wants to have closure, a communication, like a real connection with Mary. And other times we will have one person who is maybe more dismissive, avoidant, and their way of getting closure is just to avoid completely. And so that can be really challenging on the person who needs the closure more, right? So what do we do if we're on our own in this situation? Well, one of the first things is you want to ask yourself, what am I looking for from closure? So let me break closure down. Okay, what does closure mean to me? For one person, it's about being understood. For another person, it's about being heard and seen. For another person, it's about just saying goodbye effectively. So what is it? And then you want to be able to look for, how can I meet those needs on my own for myself? Okay, and if it's about, a lot of it, honestly, for a lot of individuals, is also, just on a side note here, about accepting that the relationship is over. Sometimes people say closure and they use this for like kind of an accidental substitution for just resistance, not being able, not allowing myself to accept that the relationship is over. And so sometimes closure is actually a subconscious, like it's not necessarily conscious and intentional, but a subconscious strategy to like go back to the person and see if there's anything left there, or see if you can still make something work, or something like that. And so it's really important to allow yourself to be with yourself and go, okay, what does closure really mean to me? And what's a strategy to get closure met based on what I understand it means to me? And then if it's actually about like healing from the person and breakup, you can ask yourself, like, what am I not letting go of? What traits or qualities am I not letting go of? And how can I make an effort to like integrate those traits more into my own life, or bring people into my life who also bring those traits or qualities? So maybe you're having a hard time letting go of that person supported you so much, and now that support feels like it's gone for your life. So how can I support myself better? Or how can I reconnect with more supportive people in my life? And so these are really important questions to begin asking yourself, okay? So great question as well. And the last question I'm going to go through in this video is how to know, this is a great question too, from E and M. How do you know if someone is right for you? I've learned here that our attractions are to be questioned based on our core wounds and vulnerability to limerence, and our shadows are like pieces of ourselves that we see in others, and that we need to identify and meet our needs. So what's the point of finding a partner again? I know it's a funny question, but I'm really curious about what I should be looking for in someone else, or why I should bother, if the answer always seems to be something that I can or should be doing for myself. So this is a beautiful question. And it brings the topic of healthy interdependency up. So what we want to know, and like a healthy state of mind we want to have, that's not codependent and not apathetic either in relationships, like we're not polarized on either end. What healthy interdependency requires is an exchange. It requires being able to be vulnerable and share that we have needs from somebody else, because it is very rewarding and very fulfilling to have our needs met by other people. We're wired for connection, and in Gabor Mate's words, we're wired for attachment, but we're also wired for authenticity. And so we have these two somewhat competing needs from one perspective, if you look at it through one lens, but through another lens, we have two needs that are required to be balanced and harmonized together. And it's beautiful that we have both, because not all of our attachments are going to meet our needs. And the authentic part of ourselves, which is really about like self-connection and self-understanding and autonomy, that part of ourselves needs to feel like we can meet our own needs sometimes. And healthy relationships require both. And so, yes, these tools that we share about, like, you know, your shadow and the subconscious mind in that area, and how that creates attraction, and how we can question our core wounds and work through and emotionally regulate ourselves so often, if not almost always. Remember, this is always like we can still go to other people and connect and get our needs met, but we just want to know that if somebody's not available, we have masterful tools that don't just leave us hanging and emotionally dysregulated and feeling needy and afraid and alone, but in fact, we trust ourselves and we've built a relationship to ourselves enough to know that we can always come back to ourselves when others are unavailable. And that's really the essence of healthy interdependency, which is being able to get my needs met through others and meet my needs myself when others aren't available, or just because I feel like it and choose to and want to be in my own company for a little bit. And so this is the balance that we're looking for. And to ever cut off one creates a lot of suffering and pain. So if we ever cut off the relationships to ourselves altogether, we get a lot of anxious behavior and a lot of neediness and fear and all these really painful things. And if we ever cut off our relationship to others altogether, that creates a lot of pain and suffering as well. So we want to have the balance of both, and it's a really wonderful question. So thank you guys for watching this. I am excited to see you in the next video, and I hope you like and share and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much.